Greetings, Jelly Spoons, and welcome back to today's episode of Monday Madness, the Monday show where I talk about anything and everything, and this week I am talking once more about my favourite subject in the entire world, Peter Pan. Of course, if you've seen my channel before, you will know that I regularly talk about this, mostly the story, the lore, the characters, that kind of thing, but I also answer you guys' questions. I get quite a lot of questions over on my TikTok series, my Peter Pan Fact series. I am slowly migrating that over to YouTube as well. I have already done my Peter Pan Storytime series, see this video here, bing! But the Peter Pan Fact series, when I do it on YouTube, I try to talk more in depth, more in detail. So on TikTok, I've basically got less than 3 minutes to try and explain things, whereas over here I can take as long as I damn well please. And while I've been doing my most recent fact videos, some people have been talking about this particular subject, so I thought, hey, I'm interested, and I've written about it before, so why not do an entire video? So sit back, relax, and welcome to today's video about Peter Pan. And today I am talking about Peter Pan and his dreams, or more specifically, his nightmares. I'm going to divide this topic into 3 sections. Part 1 is going to be, when does Peter Pan have these bad dreams? Number 2 is going to be, why does he have these bad dreams? And in part 3, I'll talk you through the very minimal descriptions we get in the story about what Peter is dreaming about, and I'll dive into a little bit of detail about what I think may be the contents of these dreams as well. As always, if you've got any thoughts, comments, queries, or suggestions, chuck them down in the comments below and I will try to respond to as many as I possibly can. Once the video is over a week old, I don't tend to get the notifications as much, so if I miss yours, I am very sorry. I am insanely busy right now, so again, I apologise, but please do chuck them down in the comments below, because if nothing else, I can come back to the comments later and potentially make a video based on some of you guys' suggestions. Also, if you're not following me over on TikTok yet, if you have TikTok, then please do follow me on there. I've accumulated a bit of a cult following in my Peter Pan Fact series and my Storytime as well, so if you want to see the short snippet videos that I post daily about that, then you can head on over to my TikTok. Otherwise, please sit back and enjoy this video today in my wonderful episode of Monday Madness. Let's go. We learn via J.M. Barrie's stage directions from the play of Peter Pan, and through his text in the novel, that Peter Pan sometimes suffers from bad dreams. Barrie only references these a couple of times, and he doesn't give us a lot to go on, which means people like me get to go completely crazy in creating our own theories. It is essentially never solved, but I think I've got a pretty solid idea based on, well, my obsessive love of this source material. So I'm going to talk you through my ideas now, and I'll also reference what there is in the source material and where I've got it from. Alright, so let's start with part number 1. When does Peter Pan have these dreams? I do want to mention before we start that when J.M. Barrie was editing his play into the later novel of Peter Pan's story, he did add and change and edit a few things. And when we're talking about Peter Pan's dreams, what he added actually gives us a bit more context, but I'll talk more about that as we go. But do bear in mind that I, at the moment, am referencing both the play and the novel, and while the descriptions differ a little bit, they do point us in the same direction. They are both fairly synced up at the moment when they first mention Peter Pan's bad dreams to us. Now, of course, in the play it's mentioned in a stage direction, and so really anyone who was watching the show wouldn't necessarily know about this, but the actors would, and that's very important for their portrayal of the characters. And then later on in the novel, we do get to read about it in text form as well. But in the play and the novel, Peter Pan having bad dreams is first mentioned at a very pivotal moment. This is just after he has essentially lost everybody. Wendy, John, and Michael have decided they are going to go home and grow up and abandon the Neverland and Peter Pan completely. All the lost boys, based on the novelty of the idea, decide that they desperately want to go with them. And Peter says no fuss, no blubbering, pretending he doesn't care, and lets them all leave. Once they've all gone, he's alone in the home under the ground. And after playing on his pipes for a little while, convincing himself that he is not as sad as he probably is, and then trying to laugh, he ends up falling asleep on the great bed. Now, at this moment, in both the play and the novel, J.M. Barrie speaks to us about Peter Pan having dreams sometimes while he is asleep, and how they are more painful than those of other boys. In the novel, J.M. Barrie says that he is not having one of these nightmares today, though. And in the play, he actually is. The description J.M. Barrie gives in the novel is this. Sometimes, though not often, he had dreams, and they were more painful than the dreams of other boys. For hours he could not be separated from these dreams, though he wailed piteously in them. They had to do, I think, with the riddle of his existence. A very interesting description given to us by the author there, and I'm going to talk about the riddle of his existence later on. We're talking about the when for now though, so carrying on. The first time in the play that Peter has one of these dreams is right after he has been abandoned by all of his lost boys, Wendy, John, and Michael. The next time that Peter is referenced as having one of these bad dreams is in the novel. In the play at this point, they're busy doing other things and it has to go into a scene change, so I can understand why it wasn't referenced there, but in the novel, J.M. Barrie gets to go into more detail. And this pivotal moment when Peter Pan suffers from one of his bad dreams is right after the defeat of the pirates and Captain Hook on the deck of the Jolly Roger. The children have taken over the ship and they are about to set sail to take the lost boys, Wendy, John and Michael, to grow up and go back home. At the end of the chapter, Hook or Me this time, Barrie describes how all the lost boys, Wendy, John and Michael, went down and slept in the pirates' bunks, except for Peter, who strutted up and down on deck and eventually fell asleep by the side of Long Tom, the big cannon. Barrie then goes on to describe how Peter had one of his dreams that night, and he cried for a long time in his sleep. So that wraps up part 1 of the when for now. I am going to come back to this later at the end though. At the very end of this video, I will talk about the why, the when, and the what, and I'm going to make some predictions about times I think Peter will have had these dreams as well, but we just weren't told about them in the story. Alright then, moving on to part 2. Why? These are all the descriptions that J.M. Barrie gives us of Peter Pan's dreams over the course of the play and the novel. Sometimes, though not often, he had dreams, and they were more painful than the dreams of other boys. For hours he could not be separated from these dreams, though he wailed piteously in them. They had to do, I think, with the riddle of his existence. He had one of his dreams that night, and cried in his sleep for a long time. He is dreaming, and in his dreams he is always in pursuit of a boy who was never there, nor anywhere. The only boy who could beat him. The answer to the riddle of Peter's existence is he forgets. How does he cope with immortality? How does he cope with never aging and continuing to live on and on and on? He forgets everything, everyone, every experience he ever has continuously, which means that he gets to live in a perpetual state of innocent joyfulness. He experiences things over and over again for the first time, which means he always gets to enjoy them and relish them. He has endless things to look forward to without even realizing it. And he is unburdened by anything at all, including his past actions and experiences. And this is the key to the riddle of his existence and why he has these dreams. I think that J.M. Barrie has given us the answer about why as well, talking about the riddle of his being, the riddle of his existence. And J.M. Barrie talks about how Peter can never get the hang of the thing being how he exists. While he manages to forget everything and experience things over and over again, I think that some of the memories might manifest and resurface in his dreams. Whether he remembers the events entirely or just has strong feelings that he can't remember feeling before but suddenly rise up in his sleep, I will talk about later on. But whatever it is, I think the why of it is because it comes at a pivotal and potentially serious moment. Take the 2 moments that we do know of. Peter has bad dreams after Wendy and all the boys have abandoned him. And then he has bad dreams the night after he has slain one of his true enemies, Captain Hook. Both occasions are hugely significant times in his life because he has lost something. When he loses Wendy and the boys, he's losing his familial companionship. He's losing the boys who have been adventuring with him for potentially years on the Neverland at this point. He's losing a mother figure. He's losing that stability that he had. Even though he didn't always enjoy it or want it, he still had it there. He has lost everything that he knew and the way his whole world worked. And while, of course, he did allow them to leave and he would never have kept them there against their will, he does still feel that loss, in particular because he doesn't allow himself to show it, pretending to play merrily on his pipes and not giving any of them a particularly sorrowful goodbye. Later on, he loses Captain Hook. Now, this isn't to say that he and Hook were secretly friends or anything like that. It's just that it was a huge piece of his life. And Captain Hook, as I talked about in other videos, didn't just betray Peter Pan when he did several of the things that he did. He also betrayed the Neverland itself. If you'd like some clarification, just ask me and I'll chuck it down in the comments, but I do talk about it quite a lot in my TikTok channel. Putting all of that together then, I think the why has started to become more clear. Why does Peter have these dreams? What is it to do with the riddle of his existence? Well, he constantly forgets things over and over again, so he faces everything as the first time. So these dreams come to Peter just after he has had, once again, the first time experiencing such a huge, painful moment of significance to him. Be that loss, death, anything like that. Any dark, horrible, nasty feeling of painfulness that's when the dreams come. The why is because he keeps forgetting. And so it feels hugely impactful the first time, every time. When Peter loses all of his friends and Wendy, John, and Michael, that hits him really hard because as far as he's aware, he probably has never been abandoned like that before. And then later on, Peter Pan is facing the loss of a huge enemy to him. This was a massive piece of significance in his life. Peter Pan and Captain Hook had been fighting for a long time, and Hook had made dogged attempts on his life many, many times, and the Lost Boys as well. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that on some level, Peter Pan mourns Captain Hook. Not because the two of them were secretly friends or he actually liked the pirate, but because he enjoyed the game. That part of the game is now over and gone and dead. And of course, you can make the argument as well that Peter Pan is witnessing death again for the first time. He watched Captain Hook die. He watched him fall to the crocodile and, get eaten and die. So he may be coming to terms with that a little bit as well, again, as his first time experiencing that. And this is the key thing we have to remember about Peter Pan and how he exists, the riddle of his being. Peter exists so happily and so joyfully and carefreely because he forgets everything. That's what makes him free. And that, I think, is why he has such bad dreams at moments of significant change and pain. And now we move on to the final part, part 3. What is Peter Pan dreaming about? We've talked about the when, we've talked about the why, and now we move on to the what. The first most obvious answer that we have comes directly from J.M. Barrie, as I quoted before. J.M. Barrie talks about how Peter is chasing the one boy who can best him, but a boy who was never really there. And this, I believe, probably is what most of his bad dreams are about, at least visually. The other things I think are included are the emotions that rise up with it. While he's chasing this boy, if he's suffered a great loss, that'll be what he's feeling. When Wendy and the Lost Boys left, I imagine he was chasing this boy down, feeling as if maybe if he caught this boy, then they would come back. You could also probably make the argument that Peter might be chasing down this boy as a sort of way of chasing down his emotions, either to stifle them or to try to fully experience them, though I don't think he would be aware that that's what he was thinking. So, how does he respond to Captain Hook being dead? In terms of what I think Peter could be dreaming about at this particular moment, I believe if he is chasing down that boy again, the feeling he would have along with it is probably something akin to how he felt when he believed Wendy was dead. Puzzlement, confusion, maybe a little bit of shock, and just not quite knowing how to feel. That huge bundle of confusion, potentially a little sorrow. It's the loss of an enemy, the loss of a fellow player in a game, the loss of a key component that was so hugely a part of his life for so long. Yes, he's defeated it, but now what? Well, I believe, once again, the Neverland is continuously full of adventures and he will have another enemy within a few minutes if he wanted to. He still doesn't know that. Remember again, Peter forgets. So to him, this is a first. He's probably standing on a precipice feeling like, yes, I have defeated this bad evil captain. Yes, I've defeated the big, essentially the big bad boss, he's defeated the big bad evil guy. Now what? So I don't think it would be too much of a stretch to say that Peter Pan, in the dream he has at this point, is probably completely confused and almost as alone as he felt in the dreams after Wendy and the Lost Boys abandoned him. I also believe that potentially Peter Pan could have flashes of memory in these dreams as well. While the riddle of his existence is in him being able to forget everything over and over again and have the joy of experiencing even sad emotions for the first time over and over again, I think that some particularly harrowing moments could resurface every so often in his nightmares, particularly that of beating his fists on the window as his own mother had barred the window and left him out. That feeling that he felt of being left out of the one thing that he thought would always be there, his mother leaving the window open for him, and completely losing that first real moment of pain and sorrow and agony, that even though he has forgotten it, it still does stay with him on some level because he mentions it to Wendy and the boys and describes it as if it's true. Barrie does write that Peter isn't completely sure that it's true, but it's stuck around there somehow. I think it sticks around in his nightmares. And every so often, not every time, but particularly in moments of great loss and maybe feeling abandoned and alone, I think he probably would experience that moment over again. He may not remember it completely when he wakes up, but I think it would manifest in his dreams as well. I also think some other elements of his nightmares may include Peter's fears, things such as growing old, being ordinary, being boring, that kind of thing, losing the adventures, losing the fun, just the blank nothingness that he always strives to avoid, that kind of thing. And potentially you could argue that he may have some nightmares about the things that he has seen and done, things such as seeing death or murdering people, things such as causing pain or having pain inflicted on himself, various things like that. Because not only is he experiencing them for the first time, which will cause him to have that shock of emotion, he may also then suddenly have flashes of memory, and it may all rise up and completely overwhelm him in that, oh my god, I've done so many horrible things. Although, personally, I'm not quite so sure about that one, but it's still on the table, I suppose. While Peter forgets everything that he's done and essentially is devoid of the consequences, at least to himself, he may remember them in his nightmares, and that may come up over and over again and then be forgotten once more. So a lot of that could also be incorporated too. To wrap up this video then, I'm going to talk about some of the times that I believe Peter Pan would very likely have experienced very similar nightmarish dreams at other points during the story, or later on in his life. A very key one for me is I believe Peter will have had some of these nightmarish dreams the night after he escaped from Marooner's Rock. Again, the riddle of his existence, Peter forgets everything, so to Peter, standing on Marooner's Rock, believing he was about to die, that's the first time to him that he's had to face his own death. I highly doubt that after an experience like that, he would sleep completely peacefully. Perhaps in those dreams, he is chasing down this boy and feeling like if he can only catch him up, then he can make sure he never, ever, ever faces that moment again. Or he's just feeling that horrible pain of, I almost died. What would have happened if I died? Maybe it would have been an adventure. And his confusion and not knowing and just the sudden jolt of that feeling. Again, remember, for the first time. I also think Peter would very likely have had some nightmarish dreams the first night he was back on the Neverland all alone. When he had dropped Wendy and the boys off and they'd all been adopted and started being raised by the Darlings, Peter flew back to the Neverland. The little house they built for Wendy was put up into the treetops and Peter went to live there with the fairies. However, after all of that, coming home to an essentially, the empty house, and while there are loads of adventures happening on the Neverland, he could just be feeling that loss once again as it settles in that he is now playing the game alone and essentially, sort of starting at zero again with no lost boys, no Wendy, John, Michael, none of that. So I think it's very likely he could have had at least some small nightmares that night as well. And a final guess that I'm going to make to round off this video on a totally not happy note is I believe that Peter Pan may very likely have had some of these bad dreams or nightmares the night that Tinkerbell really did die. We know that by the time Peter came back to go and get Wendy to spend a week with him on the Neverland once again, Tinkerbell was forgotten to him and therefore very likely dead. So at some point over the course of that time, he will have experienced really losing Tinkerbell, and I think that will have hit him particularly hard. So I do think it's very likely he will have had some very painful dreams that night as well. Gosh, this video was cheerful. I'm going to finish on a happy note, and I'm going to talk about merch! Alright, so some of you have been asking, in fact quite a lot of you have been asking, and I got a load of you guys' suggestions and thoughts and all of this in the comment sections of various different videos, and essentially, I have merch now. Some of you already know that over on my Ko-fi page, I am selling these. I'm calling them Kisses from Morku, and yeah, I'm not changing that name, despite how weird it sounds every time I say it. This is some of the acorns that I made for props in my Never Never movie. If you want to see more about that, check out my Never Never movie project video series. And I attached them to the necklaces with some thimbles because, kisses, Peter Pan, etc, etc. I have only got, I believe, 7 of them left because I made, only a few. These were some leftover props that I had. So if you would like one of these for your very own, head over to my Ko-fi page and you can purchase one of these for your very own. And I also have merch as well. You guys asked, and so I am delivering. I am only delving into this just a tiny little bit to see how it all goes, but I do have 6 pin badges that I have made, designed based on the things that you guys suggested, and I'm wearing a few of them now. So, where are they? All right. The first design I have is my Jelly Spoons badge. I really like this. I drew this jelly spoon myself, as you can probably tell. It's not amazing, but it's cute, and I like it. And so this is my logo that you can see down the bottom of my YouTube somewhere. This is because I call you guys my Jelly Spoons. Can't 100% remember when I started doing that, but it's stuck and I'm never changing it, so Jelly Spoons badges are available. Sticking with the Peter Pan theme, this apparently is something that I say far too much and people know far too well from me, so this is the There Is No Star badge. If you know, you know, and you've probably been watching my content way too much. So yeah, this is a badge, there is no star. I also have 2 different versions of my Peter Pan Fact Series badges. So I've got one with myself on it and one that's just a logo. So I've got 2 Peter Pan Fact Series badges as well. I like them both. I actually wore one of these to work by accident, and I am not sorry. So yeah, Peter Pan Fact Series badges as well, because that is where a lot of you seem to know me from, and I'm not complaining. The last Peter Pan one is just a mugshot of me in my favourite Peter Pan cosplay, so if you want this one, that is just my face. If you want my face on a badge that you can wear, then you can have this one as well. And the final design I have available at the moment came direct from the TikTok comments of one of my videos. I was talking about the Once Upon a Time version of Captain Hook, and I said this. I said, sexy is not a character trait, and people went crazy, so yeah, this is now on a pin badge. So if you would like to have sexy is not a character trait emblazoned upon you, this is where you can get it. So yeah, these are the six badges that I have available. I will be putting them up in my Ko-fi shop over the next week or so, I think. So I'm making these myself. They're going to go interestingly well. So head on over to my Ko-fi if you would like to purchase one of those. Also, while I'm here, I should probably talk about my Never Never movie project a little bit. I am, as many of you will know, creating my very own, very amateur Peter Pan movie this year, and it's going to hopefully be finished by the end of December. If you'd like to help support me on this crazy, crazy journey, and with many other things that are happening in my personal life that some of you know about and I'm not talking about just yet. But anyway, you can head on over to my Ko-fi and you can chuck me support there. You can purchase something from my shop of merch or Kiss Chaos, or on my Ko-fi page as well, you can support me by commissioning me. I am currently offering personalised in-character commission messages. I do quite a lot of birthdays. Currently they're on offer from Peter Pan, Mollymauk Tea Leaf, Lucien the Nonagon, Kingsley Tea Leaf, and Puck from A Midsummer Night's Dream. And if you do Puck, you get a Shakespearean soliloquy all of your very own. So if you would like any of those characters to send you or somebody else a personalised in-character message, go onto my Ko-fi commissions and you can do those there. Trotting on over to Patreon now. If you would like to support me on a monthly basis, then you can trot over to my Patreon page where you can support me. I believe it starts from $3 a month. So if you want to be committed to me on a monthly basis, don't worry, you don't have to, then you can jump over to my Patreon page as well. People on my Patreon get to look at things behind the scenes, they get to vote on stuff, they help me decide what colour to make the Neverbird's eyes while I've started making the puppet of her, and also anyone who backs me on Ko-fi or Patreon this year will get a questionnaire sent out to them from me, where they will get to choose things like hair colour and design, and I will make a little fairy or gnome style creature, and I will put that, based on your description, into my Never Never movie at some point where it will get featured in the back, and I will also be sending creatures out to people as well as a way of saying thank you for supporting me through this crazy journey. Alright, so merch, Never Never movie, Ko-fi commissions, shop, things, stuff, Patreon, all the wonderful things. Go forth and bring chaos into the world, my wonderful jelly spoons. I love you all. I will speak to you very soon. Goodbye.